Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Fandom Buzz. Yes, we're gonna be buzzing. We got some tea, and we got some stuff to spill
the tea
on. That's right.
But before everything else, as usual, we're going to be doing a SipsBy unboxing.
That's right. What do we got this time?
I don't know yet because we haven't opened it yet.
So while Alexa's opening that stuff, today's Fandom Buzz is going to be all about music. So
still have the spoiler card.
So the spoiler card, still got the SipsBy kind of bags, which I think is so cool because if you got loose leaf, they're not going to be so loose after anymore after this. So that's going to be kind of cool. All right. So let's look at some English Afternoon.
Okay, English Afternoon.
Black tea.
It's by Ahmed Tea, and apparently they're a British family business with a long tradition. They supply tea for the royal collection, including Buckingham Palace.
Very nice.
So that's cool black tea with a slight touch of bergamot and high caffeine.
Oh yeah, my friends.
So they're in tea bags, I think.
Yes, they are, because they've got those individually wrapped pieces here. So let's move on to some Nepal tea.
Okay, that's Kanchan Jangha Noir by Nepal Tea, and that's organic black tea from Nepal. It's also high caffeine. This tea has a distinct brisk flavor with a deep and vibrant reddish-brown infusion. It's a fresh, fruity, flowery aroma with hints of caramel.
So that's Nepal tea for you. Then we have Bare Leaves.
Bare Leaves, Fujian Oolong. So that's pure oolong tea leaves from eastern Fujian province, China. Wow, we're going international here.
That's true.
So it has a medium caffeine level, and it tastes a bit toasty, according to what this description says.
Tastes so good though.
Organic cinnamon rooibos chai by David's Tea, right?
Yes.
And this one is caffeine-free, like I said. It's rooibos and cinnamon. Cinnamon apparently enhances your ability to concentrate, and rooibos is super hydrating and filled with vitamins and minerals.
It's got apple and cinnamon.
Okay.
Such a shame we could have been friends.
So, as usual, on the spoiler card as well, you actually get discount codes for all of these tea places. They will list them all on the card for you. So today, it's kind of warm, so I don't think we can get away with drinking hot
We're not
tea.
gonna like, we'll steep it for sure, but you know what? We're gonna throw some ice in there. It's gonna be a nice tea party.
It's gonna be an iced tea party.
That's right.
So which tea are we gonna make?
What? Well, we're gonna find out, aren't we?
Back soon.
And we have returned.
Tea
with
time.
some iced tea. I did a little bit of mango infusion in here. So we basically went with the cinnamon one because there's no caffeine. He doesn't have to put anybody to sleep. And I basically just did, I want to say that was 4 cups maybe and then so 4 cups of tea. And I want to say about a cup and a half of like that mango kind of mix kind of deal.
It tastes great.
And it tastes just lovely.
Oh, by the way, if you're interested in trying out SipsBy for yourself, there's a code down there. And the link to
go for it. Like ask for like the cinnamon thing. It's really good. Like this is great. Like I should put it to my face.
Like we said, it's Fandom Buzz time, which means we are back to buzzing about something that we are buzzy about. Wow, I said buzz so many times.
That's true because that's the point of this whole thing. Anyway, and as per usual, I shall try to steer the conversation in a certain way. Very talk show host, very Conan, very Colbert. Today's topic is music. Like we said, sort of, I may have said earlier at the start, music is a huge deal to both of us, and we are at one point in time or currently still huge fans of certain musical influences.
That's actually the entire reason.
That's really the only reason. Somebody just needs
this one. I have a lot of feelings, and you will find out what they are later.
Anybody been stalking her on Instagram? Everybody sort of grows up with like their parents' music, and at one point that's your jam. So in Alexa's case, I hear anecdotes of how, you know, the entire Celine Dion like album that had at the time the Titanic came out.
Whatever Celine Dion.
That was the deal. I, on the other hand, grew up with a bunch of 80s pop stars, so James Ingram. At one point in time, your parents' jam is your jam. And then eventually you're like, you know what? I'm going to steal, back then, cassette tapes. I'm going to steal these bits of music. I'm going to listen to it on my own, you know, kind of almost because that's the only thing that was there. So my first question would be, when you could actually remember that you had agency over like the kind of music that you would listen to, what was the earliest, biggest musical influence that you were like, I am buying that album, I am begging my parents to get me that, and I am doing it? Like, what was the thing that you were like?
I mean, I didn't beg them to buy me things until I was a lot older. I think I was like 11 or 12, but taking things for myself, I guess, is that
taking it's like that's just totally
like being like, I'm gonna borrow
taking
this.
or you know what, I'm gonna start listening to this now because this is
okay.
This is
I
my
actually
thing.
remember we had the type of like CD player, I guess, where it would like you could put 5 CDs in.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay.
Yeah, I've seen those.
We had the CD, and obviously, if I got to pick what I wanted to put in, there were only like 3 albums that I ever listened to, like when I was a kid. It was the Spice Girls, the Spice album specifically, the Backstreet Boys album, the very first one.
It was Get Down.
Yes. Oh my God, Get Down. That is a throwback.
that I remember any of this stuff. I swear to
And
God.
there was this pop star named Gina G. And I just liked her music because it was very like dancey and fun and pop. Those are like the 3 albums that I would always put in like whichever one. And like
Right.
I would just let fate decide which one got played first. Like I didn't really think about positioning, but those are the 3 I remember best as a kid. I was particularly fond of the Spice Girls, which is unsurprising because I grew up with a sister. And because we were like fairly close in age, that was our thing. Like we just wanted to be like the Spice Girls. So that was a whole phase of my life. Like it was a very
You and every other 9-year-old at the time.
yeah,
I think.
basically.
Mine would have to be Queen, for sure.
Good choice.
100% Queen. I remember we had a greatest hits cassette tape, and I listened to that up and down the wazoo. It was black, and it had like all 4 members like at the front, and it just said greatest hits. And I thought, I guess this is everything. And it started out with Bohemian Rhapsody, and it ended with We Are the Champions. So
Nice.
that was great, all the way up and down. The Beatles, tons and tons of Beatles songs. My parents were such huge Beatles fans, mostly my dad, and then eventually, like to some extent, my mom. She had some few songs that she was like, "Oh my God, these songs are like life," and my dad's like, "I just like all of them." So clearly, different ends of the fandom spectrum. I ended up sort of co-opting ownership of a lot of like some of the stuff that was theirs. I remember we had a Sgt. Pepper album. We had the one with Maxwell Silverhammer, Abbey Road, I think. A Yellow Submarine was in there too. So that was like so. It always sort of like a game to me. It's like what new Beatles thing would be out there. And oddly enough, the Bee Gees. Oddly enough, it was very 70s disco, kind of like
I see
falsetto, high notes, and so that's what I started to co-opt.
I feel like technically we probably both could count. I don't know if you would count it as when you were a kid though, because this is something that definitely was like the soundtrack of my life when I was a child.
Okay.
Any Disney movie that came out after 1989.
That was actually my lead into my next
okay.
question, because my next question is, well, now what albums did you actually acquire for yourself? And the first album I ever bought for me was the Little Mermaid soundtrack, and I wore 3 cassette tapes out. I watched The Little Mermaid. I think we came to the States just to visit. Yeah. Somebody put The Little Mermaid on like a VHS tape or some such, and they put the tape on, and I'm just like, this is amazing. So I love that. My first 2 Disney albums that I absolutely loved, 8,000,000%, was the Little Mermaid soundtrack and the Disney Afternoon soundtrack. OG Disney Afternoon.
I don't actually know what that is.
Oh boy, I'm so old. But the OG Disney Afternoon soundtrack had the Disney Afternoon theme.
Okay.
Which had this really cool kind of arpeggio to it. DuckTales, Gummy Bears, Tailspin, and Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers.
Okay.
And a bunch of other like sidetracks. So that tape was in green, the Little Mermaid was in like blue, and from then that started my compulsive collection of TV movie soundtracks, to the point where if I can't find the actual soundtrack being sold, I would rent the video and put my tape recorder up to the TV and record stuff. Like before Pocahontas came out,
I was about to say that's
they released The Colors of the Wind, and that was not out anywhere. And I'm just like putting my I'm gonna record this thing, and on the way back from school, I would listen to like all of the stuff that I'd recorded.
I love that.
I had tapes and tapes and tapes of just stuff from like
I'm surprised
movies.
The Lion King isn't on your list.
Well, it wasn't the start of it, right? But that was like it progressed. That was in broad
part of it.
sweeps. Yeah, I had like 5 Lion King tapes because I wore them out.
I know we had a lot when we were growing up. Like we had a lot. There's actually one Disney one and one non-Disney thing that I actually remember. I think I was like 8 or 9, and we had just moved to the Philippines actually. And the reason I remember it so well is because those were the only 2 things I listened to. So when I was prompted in music class to pick a song and sing it in front of the whole class, I either had the choice of singing a song from Mulan, because that was one of the only soundtracks. Like I owned the actual CD soundtrack.
Interesting that I didn't collect that one.
And Anastasia. That was the other thing I owned, the full soundtrack, which is what I ended up picking.
That I needed in my life.
I ended up singing Once Upon in December because why not? Those are the 2 things I actually remember from when I was like 8 or 9, like when we had just moved to the Philippines.
Which leads me to like the other half of that piece, because I don't know, but because we sort of grew up with these cartoons, did anybody else sort of grow up like, this is half of the music I listen to, and it has everything to do with cartoons and fandom and stories.
And then there's the other half.
And then there's the other half where it's actual like artists out there doing like stuff.
I mean,
right?
I didn't even get to the actual artist part yet.
Yeah, and so that's where it was, because roughly around the time when you have the enough agency to actually go pick an album that says all dogs go to heaven, like this one's mine, it took me years actually, well not too many years, but it wasn't until like 6th grade that I actually started buying music.
Wow, that's really young.
Yeah.
Oh, well, no, to be fair, I started in like 5th grade. What am I talking about?
Yeah, to 6th grade, like 5th. I want to say 4th, 5th, 6th grade, until I decided I wanted to listen to other things too.
Yeah.
So what were the other things that you want to listen to that were not a Disney or animated movie soundtrack?
Well, I have said this before. I am a boy band person, and my boy band phase started when I was in the 5th grade.
Gee.
Prior to the boy band phase, there was a very brief Steps phase. I'm going to throw that in there because it's actually significant enough to remember. There was a very brief Steps phase.
Didn't you have like a Steps conversation recently with your
Yeah,
friends?
with Lauren from Fiction Tea. So I went through a brief Steps phase, but I got sucked into the world of boy bands. So I was already familiar with the Backstreet Boys because my parents are huge Backstreet Boys fans. Like, they've been fans for a while. I also started listening to their other boy band music, which was like 98 Degrees, NSYNC. This was the height of my NSYNC fandom. 5th and 6th grades and my first year of high school. This is when I started writing fan fiction, when I started going online, like, and looking for things. Like, this was when they released their, I want to say, second album.
No Strings Attached.
Yes,
yeah, okay.
the Puppets one. I loved it. I was obsessed. I was obsessed. But here's the thing. In tandem with those, which were all like from my parents, for the most part, I also had like all of the ones that I got to know because I was in the Philippines, because they were more famous in Europe and Asia. So there's A1, who are huge in the Philippines. There's Blue, who are also huge in the Philippines. And then there's Westlife. 2001 is the year where I literally had this entire list of like boy bands that I cared about. I had posters everywhere. I had like song lyrics, and like at the time this was like the old Nokia phone,
which to
where
me
you
is
could like
fascinating.
change like the ringtones, and like you could make it be like whatever you had to like type it in to make the ringtone. I had like a whole book where it was just boy band stuff, and I would keep the codes. Like, this is the level like I still have NSYNC Marionettes. Those are like
Joey.
my main boy band obsessions up until, well, most of them up until now. I will say there's also like this random wildcard year where I was obsessed. I think it was like, I was like 13, 14, 15. I was obsessed with this Taiwanese boy band called F4. They were in this show called Beat Your Garden, which is how I first found out.
And wasn't that, but that was based off of a manga, I think.
It was based off a Japanese manga, yeah. When I say I love boy bands, I literally mean like I love boy bands. Like, it just kept going after like all of that. We're gonna get into like my adult years later because that's a whole subsection of things, but those were my biggest obsessions. I will say in tandem with the boy band phase, we're gonna revisit the boy band phase later, but in tandem with it, I actually had a girl pop star phase. So Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera,
well, that
Mandy
was,
Moore,
but that was the phase back in the day. And I
like
think,
all of those people.
I don't know if any of you noticed this, whatever generation you come from, there's always a bunch of female pop stars.
Yes.
In the 80s, it was Tiffany and Olivia Newton-John and Kylie Minogue, those folks, of which I love. Eventually, it was actually ironic after the fact. Like, it was only, I think it was in college that I sort of went back and dug a little further into the 80s beyond like the usual Whitney Houstons and James Ingrams, and got to the real candy pop, like, you know.
I mean, I've always been a pop
You know,
girl.
like, I have been singing If Love Is Blind for like years now by Tiffany, and it's just it's gold. As somebody who does play music, and I did like the music sort of growing up in a kind of I produce it kind of way, I actually gravitated a little bit more to singer-songwriters, female singer-songwriters. First I went through a classic rock phase.
Classic rock is a great phase.
It was a tiny phase back in the day when I decided to buy a Guns N' Roses album because I liked Sweet Child of Mine, and I bought Appetite for Destruction, and then I decided, yeah, why the heck not? Let's try Metallica, and it was Justice for All. You know, it was there. I listened to it a couple of times. I ended up loaning it to a cousin of mine who never gave it back, I think, and I never looked for it either. But then quickly I sort of moved on to sort of like alternative, and sort of, you know, people like, oh, you listen to Nirvana, and I'm like, yeah, it's kind of cool, but it wasn't just sort of my thing. I was looking for something else, and then I put the Cranberries on, and I'm just like, I think this is, and I know because they feature Dreams in the next Karate Kid movie with Hilary Swank, and she was training with the monks, and Dreams came on, and I'm just like, I think I know that song, and it was the Cranberries, and that whole spiral of Cranberries fandom for me. That was my deal. Like, I love the whole female singer-songwriter thing. Discovered Sarah McLachlan not too you know, a few years later watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and it was the end of season 2. Full of Grace starts to play by Sarah McLachlan. I'm just like, what is this exquisite pain? And so Tori Amos, that kind of. So my music went to, like, for hers obviously was a clear, stark, like, bright, you know, lively
Can you tell?
Pop beats and love.
And then pop ballads. Those are
pop ballads. Well, with me, it's just like, let's listen to Tori Amos and the implications of Cornflake Girl, and and not even the whole Tori Amos discography. I really just like Cornflake Girl and Silent All These Years, which deep and heavy. Leads me to, okay, so what does that all mean? Still want to live the rock star dream, apparently, because all of these involve bands and stuff. So Collective Soul was a huge. The Goo Goo Dolls came out, and I was in high school. Slide, Black Balloon was like one of my favorites. Dizzy Up the Girl was, and I was at the Dizzy Up the Girl like 20th anniversary concert or whatever that was. 25th anniversary, I don't know. And they played the entire album. It was great. Had to represent. So that sort of like was the height and the peak, and unfortunately the only era where I listened to alternative rock, and it sort of died afterwards because I went straight into Broadway in high school, in college.
Oh, are we going to phase into college then?
Because in college it was just like musicals, I think.
That's funny, because like college is also when I started properly listening to musicals. I had started that like maybe when I was in my sophomore year of high school because of one of my teachers. His collection was really eclectic. Like it was a weird mix of like very unknown shows, which I can't even remember anymore, and then stuff like Chitty Chitty Bang Bang or Les Miserables.
Did anybody else go through a Les Mis phase? Because
I went through a Les
I was definitely Miserables at the time.
But really, it was in college when I joined Blue Repertory. That was when it got honed into things where I could find specific things that I really loved.
Yeah, my theater
And one
phase.
of those things, like I really have to say it because it is the musical that until now is my favorite, Wicked. I loved Wicked. I loved it. And then Mackie introduced me to the last 5 years, and I loved that as well. And until now, I've come to the point where like I like a lot of Broadway shows, and I enjoy the music in a lot of them. But
she actually watches more Broadway shows.
There are only very few where the music is really something that sticks with me and something that I will want to listen to again and again and again.
Agreed.
That was also a brand new phase for me. I actually went through a brief, like, I don't want to call it an emo phase because it's not an emo phase, but it sort of felt like an emo phase.
Wait. Was this Paramore?
Yeah, it was like Paramore, Jack's Mannequin, like stuff like that.
College was angsty, right? Because of all of the stress, and you just sort of need to rock things out.
I tumbled out of that and right back into my pop fandom in college as well, because college was when I first listened to Taylor Swift.
The Swift era. Now, here's a fun thing. I don't have too many musical contributions to Alexa's life. Like, much
Broadway
or
is
at all.
most of it.
It was mostly Broadway, and that would make complete sense because I was a total theater nut. But it's actually Alexa who, to this day, has been bringing music into my general
And it's like
vicinity.
unintentional. Like, I don't even do it on purpose.
Like, Taylor Swift, for example. I had no plans on listening to...
I didn't either.
To Taylor Swift. I love storytelling, and Taylor Swift happens to be one of the, like, you know, as a writer, you know, and you know, back in the day when she wrote "You Belong with Me," it's a mini kind of YA story condensed into 3 minutes.
Actually.
And you watch this stuff, and then with the prom and the thing, and that murdered me. Where I'm like, hey, that was cute. And that's where it happened. Now, again, much controversy around Miss Swift and the way she comports herself. But I think as a songwriter, there's a lot of her stuff that I'm just like. Yeah, and when 1989 came out, the whole world was like, girl can write a song. As far as her being a songwriter and nothing else in and outside of that, I would say, yeah, there's some stuff in there that I absolutely like. Oh, should I mention my Mariah Carey phase?
I mean, if you would like to out yourself on the internet.
Sort of recap, everybody has like, you grow up and it's your parents' music and then you sort of take it for your own. It's almost like inherited music. You've got your, because we grew up, you got your phases, but at the same time, but the phases sort of stay with you when they become buckets, right? Well, not all of them, true. Like, for example, I think we still have the Disney soundtrack.
Oh, please. That's a bucket you can't get out.
That was a phase that became a bucket. Like, it's a thing now. And it's a hop, skip, and throw away from that bucket to musical theater, because that's exactly what these TV musicals are. They took the format of musical theater where suddenly characters like begin to sing out of nowhere until it became ridiculous when they weren't doing it as well as we were hoping they would. Then you've got your go-to music at every era of your life, in which case yours was the boy band piece, mine was sort of female singer-songwriter type deal, right? Which carries on to today, oddly enough, although I don't listen
mine actually carries on. Oops.
Right, although I may have dropped sort of like the rock piece until my return to classic rock because of movies like Rock of Ages, and it's not even a movie, it's a movie musical. The entire Iron Man soundtrack where you've got AC/DC up on there, and I'm just like, yes, childhood. Which now leads us to, well, you've got these phases that have become like the buckets of music that you keep in your life. Where are you now? What is on your playlist? And why? I think that's the most important piece. Is like back then, it was like you needed the angst, so you listened to angsty stuff.
Agreed.
You wanted to explore, so you tried different things. You wanted to keep the whimsy, so you kept the whimsy. I needed to sing, hence my attachment to Jason Robert Brown, because apparently that's the only thing I can and want to sing these days anymore.
I go through a lot of like listening phases because I listen to Spotify almost constantly when I'm at work, because it's the only thing that keeps me focused, like listening to music I like. So like I mentioned, Taylor Swift is still someone I listen to a lot.
So yeah, let's give your top five. Let's give your top five artists.
I enjoy the entire gamut of her work because, like Maki said, she's she's pretty good at storytelling in a 3-minute song.
And we like the story.
She's good at capturing the feeling of that story in the song.
Exactly.
There's just something about Taylor's that feels ultimately relatable. Speaking of people who are good at capturing feelings in songs, I think James Bay is amazing at that. His songs, oh my god, I can't even explain to you, like sometimes when I'm listening to them, how deeply it will hit me in the feelings, because it just captures whatever he's feeling so well. He is just incredible as a songwriter as well, but also just seeing him play the guitar live, and hearing him sing the stuff he's written live is incredible. He is just so talented. Love his music. Could listen to it forever and repeat. But also, speaking of very talented songwriting people, there's Ed Sheeran.
Oi!
Okay,
Yeah.
and not only is Ed Sheeran great at writing music for himself, because his latest album, the last one, not the collaborations one, the one before it, Divide, is one of my all-time favorite albums, but he's also really good at writing it for other people. I'm saving the best for last, in case you were wondering where I was going with this.
Alright.
Okay, so number 4 is a little difficult, because like that one is probably like the one where like I rotate through people, and I like have current people. Like I love Sam Smith, he's a recent person I like, Shawn Mendes.
Yeah, they could stay on that life.
Yeah, but one person that I think might eventually find herself elevated out of that into actual favorite status is Maggie Rogers.
Maggie Rogers.
The first time I ever heard her song was Alaska, and that was a song that Rachel Policelli introduced to me.
Interesting.
And then when she released her album and I listened to it, I was like,
Light On
crap.
is my favorite.
So good. Light On is amazing. Retrograde is my favorite. I just love the way she sounds, and like the way her
No,
music.
Maggie Rogers, and you observe her, you watch her YouTube videos, she knows what she's doing. Like, she knows exactly, like a lot of that stuff is deliberate, and she understands, like, I just love her so
Like
much.
it's just so good. And of course, Westlife. I have loved Westlife since I was,
A child.
I want to say like 10,
Yeah.
9 or 10 years old.
It's 20 years ago.
They're always going to be special to me for the fact that the first concert I ever went to watch with both of my parents was to see Westlife on their Where Dreams Come True tour. That's their second tour, the second tour they ever did. And I was like, child, I just really love Westlife, even though they're pretty much typical like boy band, except that they don't dance. That is not a thing. They incorporate some dance.
I mean, there's
moves
some
into their-
choreography in there, but they're
it's
not like heavy on the.
It's not like BTS or like NSYNC or like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it
With
wasn't
the
heavy
actual
on
like
the-
heavy dance routine. No, they're not like that. They're mostly well known for like their ballads, their covers of songs. What I love about them is like I genuinely feel like I grew up with them. Most of the eras of my life can be defined by a couple of Westlife songs. That's really all that is. Like their music just means so much to me. It inspires so much of how I view certain things and how I write certain things, and like to me they're always just gonna, like, no matter what they do, I'm always just gonna have the huge soft spot for them. Hence why we ended up going to Crow Park in July to see their concert on the 20 tour, like the biggest fangirl.
That's what this entire Fandom
Yeah.
buzz is about. By the way.
Basically, this Fandom buzz is literally just me having no chill. You can see snippets of it in the Ireland video, you can see it in the pictures, but there's no way to actually capture what it was like when me and my sister Mel, who is also a huge Westlife fan.
Yeah, there was. I was sitting right next to you with a
It
camera.
was just like
I wasn't even taking Westlife.
it was like the most incredibly satisfying experience. First of all, you were in their home country. Second of all, you're in Crow Park, which is one of the biggest stadiums in their home country. And third, they sang like everything that I wanted to hear. And they even threw in a freaking Queen medley, which literally I was like, I wonder if they're gonna sing the song that I like. And they did.
It's
So-
Don't Stop Me Now, by the way.
Oh yeah, that's my favorite Queen song.
I went through a Don't Stop Me Now phase, so I understand what that means.
So did James Bay. Sorry. But honestly, yes, I love Westlife. I love their songs. I love their discography. I pretty much know most of it. So good. I love them so much. They just make me so happy. I will never ever get over the feeling of like having that love for them and having it grow from where I was when I was really young and impressionable to like now as an adult. Good, I just love them so much, okay.
Right.
What about you? Oh,
My-
obviously, by the way, Disney, Broadway, musicals, all that stuff is still stuff I listen to as well. It's just not.
It's more like a condensed. At this point in time, my relationship with music is very strange to me now. Like there was once a time where I could not live without having listened to all of this music, and now I go sometimes even weeks on end without even listening to anything. But then I realized that it's really more my relationship, I guess, with the writers now than anything else, rather than the actual vibe of it, I suppose. Like my number one would have to be Jason Robert Brown.
Of course.
Because theater just happens to combine the two things that I love the most, which is music and stories. Musical theater does exactly that. It is telling stories through sort of like the music piece. And so the way Jason Robert Brown, who, for those of you who don't know, wrote The Last 5 Years, very familiar movie, Jeremy Jordan and Anna Kendrick did a version of it. It's been around for a while. Cult classic. It's been done 20 million times all over the world.
One of the best.
It's a two-person show where, you know, it's about a 5-year relationship. Two kids fall in love and they get married, they get a divorce. It starts with the woman at the divorce, right when the husband sort of, well, now ex-husband, leaves the papers and the ring on the table, whilst the husband is at the beginning when at their first date. So the timeline sort of goes like that. So just that concept
alone is like the most
is already amazing. But then when you actually get to the very core of what Jason Robert Brown does with that music, just amazing. And he's written so many other shows since then, and I am up and down. If there's anything I've listened to or it's more or sung, it's
I
gonna
feel
be
like it's
everything Jason Robert Brown. I want to give obviously a shout out to Stephen Sondheim for sort of influencing like the known universe. There's some Sondheim lines where I'm just like, wow, it just blows your mind, and that I sort of still I keep, right? There's a whole musical theater bucket. Even Schwartz, I want to say.
Yeah. Waitress?
Schwartz. Bareilles, that's new to me. It would be Jason Robert Brown. I want to say Schwartz and Sondheim, and then I would have to have all of my female singer-songwriters. McLaughlin, Swift, everyone in Lilith Fair, the Indigo Girls. Boy, oh boy, the Indigo Girls. Tori Amos, and of course Sarah Bareilles. Gravity was my favorite sort of song, even if it was the most popular one. Then I hear Hold My Heart from Kaleidoscope Heart, and just tears, and I'm just like, oh my god, this song. And then plus everything Waitress, which
I was about to say
brings it all the way back up to musical theater. And then there's like the rock. It's like number 4 would be like anything alternative rock. So Live, Collective Soul, the Goo Goo Dolls, you know, sort of that era. Classic rock as well, I would like to say, rock music. And then last is just absolute miscellany,
like me throwing James Bay at him.
Basically, I only listen to songs that I can and want to sing, or that I can write stories to. Those are the only two things that I...
Yeah, I have a whole playlist where it's just like songs that make me think of stories.
So that's pretty much that, I'd like to think. We've buzzed enough. There's tea on the way.
We're curious. We would love to know, like, who are your favorite musical artists? Like, what music did you grow up listening to? Are you more of like a classic rock, alternative singer-songwriter fan like Mackie, or are you more like pop like me? You know what? I totally glossed over the fact that I also went through a deep Jonas Brothers and One Direction phase, but I did.
And they're technically, you know...
So they fall in the boy band bucket. Yeah. But I wanted to mention that here because I specifically will say that one of the reasons that Jane and I became friends so quickly is because we both love One Direction. We'll see you guys for another Fandom Buzz next month, where we'll be buzzing about something else that we're excited about. We'll see you guys soon. Bye!